Here is an example of a student responding to a question related to the fall of the Berlin Wall with 6 sources. And here's one of the 3 or 4 paragraphs this student wrote in response. You can see it's a good start, but could be much stronger if language was used in a different way and sources were used slightly differently. Okay, here's one paragraph. The Berlin Wall, built to separate the Allies-occupied West Berlin and the USSR-occupied East Berlin, became a symbol of the Iron Curtain that divided the world into communists and capitalists and cut off the Soviet Union from the rest of the world. All of this is context, which is very useful, and it's using own knowledge. So the student has demonstrated knowledge of the situation in order to build up an argument about the significance of the particular sources and the particular events to which it refers. This is a very good practice in an extended response. You don't have to be responding to sources in every single paragraph, or every single sentence. The destruction of the Berlin Wall in 1989 was hugely symbolic of the beginning of the end of this conflict and the Soviet Union. Again, more context and more use of own knowledge. Its destruction seemed a promising road to peace after years of cold conflict. Okay, lots of references to the Cold War here. By now, after 3 sentences, we're really looking for evidence that the student can use sources to support an argument. It was a commonly held belief of the Western world that the advancement of human liberty can only strengthen the cause of world peace. Okay, this is a reference to one of the sources. It's source A, or source F in the collection of sources here. This student has referred to Ronald Reagan as the origin, and that's a good idea rather than just referring to source F, for example. Now, however, Ronald Reagan was an active player in pushing the Soviet Union to tear down the Berlin Wall, and when he spoke in front of the wall, he was calling on Gorbachev and others to change their policies and to bring an end to communism. So saying it was merely a commonly held belief of the Western world is a bit too neutral. You really need to be stronger with the use of language. Continues, and that the USSR, symbolized by the Berlin Wall, was a roadblock to this peace. Okay, that's stronger. As can be seen in source G, this is a photograph of West Berliners on the top of the wall. West Berliners were deeply passionate and excited by the prospect of peace. Okay, if this had referred to the date, as in the actual day on which the wall was breached and people between East and West Berlin were able to meet again for the first time in many years, that would have been a much stronger point to make. British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, the day after the fall of the Berlin Wall, now we've got a significant date, remarked that one cannot stifle or suppress people's desires for liberty, with a reference to the source from which that quote comes. Okay, that's a good use of a source there. We could have more context about Margaret Thatcher, explain that she was a long-term British Prime Minister and very much a Cold Warrior. And now that the wall had crumbled, capitalism was triumphing over communism. That's relatively simplistic for a year 11 or 12, but it is starting to establish the context. This is the end of the wall, the end of the Cold War, and the Cold Warriors at the time were saying this was all about freedom. Now, if this is an opening paragraph, you'd really want the following paragraphs to go into more detail about other sources and perhaps different perspectives as well, not just taking political figures at the time at face value, but understand that they were trying to persuade their audiences too.